Hi guys, good night everybody. Just let me know if you guys can hear me before we start, please. All right, great. So, good night everybody. Right. So the last session that I did with you guys, it was Thursday or Friday. It focused a lot on algebra, right? And I gave you some statistics regarding last year's exam. Um, One of the largest sections of the entire syllabus is relations, functions, and graphs, right? That is the largest section of the entire syllabus. And as you know, the paper 2 has 10 questions, right? Question 4 and question 8 are based on that section of the syllabus, right? Um, so what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be doing some questions, some exam questions based on relations, functions, and graphs, right? There are lots of topics within this major section of the syllabus, right? So we have two functions here. We have g of x and we have h of x, right? Those are two functions here, right? One is x plus 3 and the next one is x squared. And this first part of this question here wants us to work out g of minus 5. Now, every single year we do get a question on this, right? So you should be prepared to answer a question like this. So for example, right, the first one here, what I will typically tell students to do is to first write down what the function is, right? In this case here, the function is g of x is equal to x plus 3. And we want to work out g of minus 5, right? G of minus 5. What that means is that I'm going to plug minus 5 into that function. So anywhere we see x, we're going to put minus 5. So this is going to be minus 5 plus 3, right? Now, minus 5 plus 3, you're owing somebody $5, but they have $3. You can give them back the 3, but you're still going to owe them $2. So this is going to be minus 2, right? So this is a simple substitution here that we have to do. For the next one here, part 2, we want to work out g inverse of 7, right? So this symbol here, when you all see g to the power minus 1 of x, they are asking us for the inverse of this function here, right? Now, this function here is a pretty simple function, right? But let me just refresh your memory in terms of what we need to do to find the inverse of a function. So if I had a question like this, what I will do, I'll find the inverse first, right? So we have g of x is equal to x plus 3. So there are basically 3 steps we need to do to find the inverse of a function. So step 1, you let y equal to that function. So in this case, y is equal to x plus 3, right? So that's step 1. The second step, you're going to interchange x and y. So basically, anywhere we see y, we're going to put x, and anywhere we see x, we're going to put y. So this here is going to be x is equal to y plus 3, right? And the final step is to make y the subject of the formula. Now, in the line before, I have y on the right-hand side. So typically what I tell students to do is write it like this. Y plus 3 is equal to x. Since the left-hand side is equal to the right-hand side, it means the right-hand side is also equal to the left-hand side. So therefore, when I make y the subject of the formula, this is going to be y is equal to x minus 3. So therefore, your inverse function, right, is given by x minus 3, right? That's your inverse function here. So if I want to find g inverse of 7, then all I'm going to do is to plug 7 into this inverse function here. So 7 minus 3, and you're going to get 4, right? And that's it. That's all we need to do for the second part here, right? Now the third part, right, that is referred to as a composite function here. We want to work out hg of 0, right? Now what some students do, they go and they work out hg of x, which is a composite function, and then they will substitute 0 into it, right? You can do that if you want, But generally, if they didn't ask me to work this out, I'm not going to do that, right? What I will do, I'll do this. I'll first find g of 0, get an answer, and then I'm going to plug that into the function each. That's typically what we're going to do. So in terms of your steps here, what I will do, I'll work out g of 0 first by plugging 0 into this expression here. So g of 0 will be 0 plus 3. So you're going to get 3, right? Now that answer we get now, we're going to plug that into this function here now. So therefore, h of 3, right, is going to be equal to 3 squared. So therefore, this is going to be 9. So therefore, the answer for hg of 0 is simply going to be 9. So my suggestion to you, if you are asked for a composite function and you are being required to substitute a value into that composite function, then do it using these two steps here, right? Rather than going to find hg of x. If they didn't ask me to do that, I'm not going to do it, right? That's just my suggestion to you all, right? Right, so for those of you who kind of weak in maths, the session has been recorded so you can access it after if you need to, right? All right, so this is first question here, right? We have a next function question here, right? Now functions, right, could be written like this as well, right? So instead of writing just f of x, don't get scared when you see something like f. Don't get scared when you see something like that, right? This statement here really says f is such that x maps onto something, right? It's just a different way of writing your function. Now, the first part here, for 2 marks, they want you to find g of 2, right? So basically, we know g of 2, right? We're just going to substitute that into this function here, right? So that's going to be 2 plus 2 all over 2 minus 5, right? Now don't rush this question here. Work out the numerator first. So 2 plus 2 is going to give you 4. And then 2 minus 5 is going to give you minus 3, right? So this here is part A, and that's, they're giving us 2 marks for this, right? But in your exam, they'll probably just give you 1 mark for something like this, right? So g of 2, when we substitute 2, you're going to get minus 4 over 3, right? Part B now. Right, this is something that appears ever so often in the exam. State the value of g for which, value of x for which g of x is not defined. Right, I know I have some of my students here in the live session. Could you all tell me what the answer is to this? State the value of x for which a function is undefined. Right. Right. Excellent job, guys. Right. So this is something that could appear, right? All right. So here's what's happening here, right? What you need to understand is when you have a function where we have x on top and you have x below, right? What happens here is that the function is not defined when the denominator is equal to 0. So I saw somebody asking how we got 5. All you need to do, or you need to remember this, 0 divided by any number is going to give us 0, right? You can use your calculator to check that. 0 divided by any number will give me 0. However, if I take any number and I divide it by 0, your calculator is going to spit out an error. And what we're saying here is that that value is undefined. So therefore, if you look at this function g here and you don't want it to be undefined, the bottom piece here, this x minus 5, cannot be equal to 0. So therefore, all I need to do, let's see what value will make that 0. If I put x minus 5 equal to 0, therefore x is equal to 5, right? So if I were to plug 5 into that function, the denominator is going to be equal to 0. And we're going to get a scenario where the function is undefined, right? So the person who was asking how we got that, just put the denominator equal to 0 and you solve for x, right? part C here now, we want to work out g f of x, right? G f of x, right? So this is part C. So if you want g f of x, that is a composite function here, right? So basically what we need to do, right? So you're going to take f of x, which is this, right? Some students have a little trouble seeing this. So we're going to take this 3 minus x and you're going to plug that into g, but anyway you see x, you're going to replace it with that, right? That's what you do. So you're taking the function f and you're going to plug that into g, right? That's what this means here. It's a composite function. You're taking f of x and you're going to plug that into g. Now let's see how we're going to treat this, right? So on top we had x plus 2. So you're going to put 3 minus x plus 2, right? So all I've done on the numerator is replace the x with the 3 minus x. On the denominator now, you're going to put 3 minus x, right? And you're going to minus 5. So those of you not seeing it, all I did, all right, all I did was replace, you see this? This was x in the original g of x. This was also x in the original g of x. But what you're doing, you're replacing it with this function f here, right? So all I need to do now is to simplify numerator and denominator. So this here is going to be 3 plus 2 is 5. So on top here, this is going to be 5 minus x on top. At the bottom here, you have minus x and you have 3 minus 5. So you can say minus 2 minus x. I hope that making some kind of sense, right? When you all say the June 2025 paper is fully developed, that paper was set a long time by CSEC, right? Right? These are just exam questions here I'm doing here, guys. All of these are past CSEC questions, okay? Right, so that's part C. All right, part D, right? Part D is very similar to what we just did in the previous question. So let me just get a blank slide here. All right, so you want to work out f inverse of 4, right? So f of x is equal to 3 minus x. Right, and the question wants me to work out f inverse of 4. Right, so the first thing I need to do, I need to find the inverse of this function. So this is very similar, is the exact same thing we just did actually. So there are 3 steps. So step 1, let y equal to 3 minus x, right? That's step 1. The second step is to interchange x and y. So x is equal to 3 minus y. And the final step is to make y the subject of the formula. So therefore, this is going to be 3 minus x. Now, hold on. Is that correct? Y is equal to 3 minus x, right? Oh. Yeah, so y is equal to 3 minus x. That's correct here, guys. Mine is looking kind of fishy here. Hold on. Am I writing something wrong? All right, so that's what I'm getting here. So therefore, the inverse function, right, is 3 minus x. Right? So if I want to work out f inverse of 4, right, I'm just going to plug 4 into this. So this is going to be 3 minus 4, and we're going to get minus 1, right? All right, so a lot of people getting that minus 1, great, right? I know it's looking kind of odd, right? Because the inverse, the function and the inverse look the same, right? All right, so next question. All right, so this one is from May 2011, right? And I have two functions, f and g. And the first part, we want to calculate g of a half, right? So if you want to work out g of a half, right? So this is part 1. So g of a half, right? We're going to substitute a half into this function g here. So this is going to be a half minus 2 divided by 3, right? A half minus 2 divided by 3. Now, a half minus 2, right? You're going to get minus 1.5 or minus 3 over 2. So this is going to be minus 3 over 2 on top. And then you're going to divide that by 3. And when we divide this, we're going to get minus a half, right? So this here is going to be minus a half, right? Right? Some of you all asking when I'm going to stream. It's really when I have the time, right? Part 2, we want an expression for g f of x, right? G f of x. So basically what's happening here in part 2, again, it's a composite function. So we have g f of x, right? So keep in mind how you're going to do this substitution. So you're reading this thing right to left. So you need to take f of x and you're going to plug that into g. So basically all of this has to be plugged into g here. That's what you're going to do, right? So in this case here, it is going to be replacing the x, but you're replacing the x with 6x plus 8, right? Then you have a minus 2, right? All over 3. So therefore 6x, right? 8 minus 2 is going to give us 6. So this is going to be plus 6 all over 3. Now the question says in its simplest form, right? Now if you want to simplify this can actually simplify further. You will get 2x plus 2, right? So you can actually simplify this further. So watch out for things like that in the exam, right? Watch out for things like that in the exam. All right, the next one here, we want to find the inverse of that function here, f of x, right? So again, it's a 3-step process, always a 3-step process. So the first thing we're going to do, step 1, you're going to let y equal to 6x plus 8, right? That's step 1. Second step, you're going to interchange x and y. So you're going to put x is equal to 6y plus 8, right? That's second step. The third step is to make y the subject of the formula. So I can write this as 6y plus 8 is equal to x, right? Therefore, 6y is equal to x minus 8. And therefore y is equal to x minus 8 all over 6, right? So basically the inverse function, right? So f inverse is given by x minus 8 all over 6, right? That's your inverse function there, right? Right, so that is a question from May 2011, right? Now in question 4 or question 8 in your exam, right, you can also get a question like this. This is also from May 2011. So there are some things we need to know regarding things like gradient, y-intercept, equation of a straight line. So we have a graph here, right? And it shows a line passing through 2 points, A and B. The first part says they want to know the coordinates of A and B. Could you all put down for me in the chat what are the coordinates for A for me, please? Look at the diagram. I want to know what are the coordinates of A. Right, I've seen people saying A is minus 2, 3, right? Minus 2, 3, right? So all we do, we read off the x value first, always the x value first, and then the y value. So the point A is -2 and 3. What about B? What are the coordinates of B, right? Right, people saying it's 4, 6, right? 4, 6. So again, read off your x value first, which is 4, right? And then 6 here, right? So it's 4, 6, right? So easy to mark here. The next thing they want you to work out the gradient of the line segment AB, right? They want you to work out the gradient of the line segment AB. Now guys, you all need to know how to find gradient of any straight line, right? This formula that I'm going to use here is not given to you in the exam, so you need to know it. It is y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1, right? So first thing, right, whenever you have to work out things like gradient and those things, right, you need 2 points to do that. So let's label those 2 points. Call this x1 y1, call this x2 y2. If you do that, then there's no reason why you shouldn't get the gradient correct. So once you label those points, it's just a matter of substituting into the formula. So my y2 is 6 minus my y1, which is 3, all over x2 in this case is 4 minus -2, right? Now work this carefully. So the numerator is 6 minus 3, so you're going to get 3 all over 4 minus -2. When you have two negative signs, one after the next like that, we treat it as an addition. So that's really 4 plus 2. That's going to give us 6. And by the way, if you do get a fraction, go ahead and reduce it. So this is going to be a half, right? So the gradient, right? So this is the answer for part 2. That's the gradient of that straight line AB here. The next part, we want to know what is the equation of the line passing through AB. So this is the third part. Now, all lines have an equation that is of the form y is equal to mx plus c, right? So there are only 2 things we need to know for the equation of a straight line. I need to know what is the gradient, and I also need to know what is the y-intercept. Now here's the thing, we just worked out the gradient, so we know what m is. So therefore y is equal to a half x, right? And c is what we call the y-intercept. Now the y-intercept is where does the graph cut the y-axis. So this is your y-axis here. So it is cutting, the line AB is cutting at 4. So therefore the y-intercept is equal to 4. So therefore there's no fancy thing that we need to do to work out the equation. All I need to do is to look at the graph and see where the graph cuts the y-axis, right? Right? So that is May 2011, right? Now guys, let me just make a comment here. So some of you all are asking about specific topics, right? Guys, if you search on my YouTube, my maths channel, you will find hundreds of hours of free material, right? I am sure any topic that you are looking for, you'll be able to find it directly on my YouTube channel, right? This year makes it 11 years since I've been posting free videos, right, on my YouTube channel, right? So if you're looking for factorizing, you're looking for transformations, you're looking for constructions, all of that is on this YouTube channel, right? So just do a quick search and you'll find it. You'll also find free crash courses that I've done previously as well. All of that is on this YouTube channel, right? Right, so let's see what's happening here. Right, so that's part B here, right? Next one, we have January 2011, right? And this is part E. So they gave them an equation here, and they asked them what is the gradient of this line, right? Now in these older papers here, CSEC giving you 2 marks. In your exam, they're only going to give you 1 mark. Do you guys know what the gradient of that line is? What is the gradient of that straight line we have there? Alright, so most of you all getting it correct, right? So here's the thing you need to remember with this, right? So we have 3y is equal to 2x minus 6, right? Now remember, all straight lines can be written in this form. Y is equal to mx plus c. This particular equation here is not in the correct format as yet before I can see what the gradient is. So I saw some of you all saying 2 is not the gradient, right? 2 is definitely not the gradient because the straight line is not written in the form y equal mx plus c. So you see this 3 across here? I need to get rid of that 3. Easiest way to do that is to divide the entire equation by 3. So this will become 2/3 x, right? When I take 6 and I divide by 3, I'm going to get 2, right? Now, this is in the correct format, right? So my gradient is actually 2/3, right? So for this one here, m has to be equal to 2 over 3, right? That's your gradient for that line. Now, the second part, they said, the equation of the line which is perpendicular to that line and passes through the point 47, right? Now, visually, I want you all to understand what's happening here. So you have a line. This is the line they gave us, right? Now, I know the gradient is 2/3, so it has a positive gradient. Now, the question is saying here what? I want to know the equation of a straight line that is perpendicular to this line, right? So this line here is 3y is equal to 2x minus 6, right? I have a point, right? I have a point here, and that point here has coordinates 4, 7. So from a visual perspective, try to understand what are they asking me for. So they want you to work out the equation of a line which is perpendicular, right, to the red line. So that's a 90 degree here, right? So we need to work out that equation of that blue line. Now here's how you do a question like this. You already know the gradient of the red line. The gradient of the red line here is 2/3. Could you guys put in the chat for me what's the gradient of the perpendicular line, the blue line? What is the gradient of the blue line? Right, most people are saying the correct thing, right? So the gradient of the blue line, right, as this blue line here, right, has to be equal to negative 3 over 2, right? Now, those of you who don't know why that is correct, so when it comes to perpendicular lines, if I take the gradient of one line and I multiply by the gradient of the second line, I should get negative 1, right? So when you have perpendicular lines, if I take the gradient of 1 and I multiply by the gradient of the second, we're going to get negative 1. That's a geometric property that we need to know when it comes to straight lines, right? So if you know the gradient of one of them, and you want to figure out the gradient of the second one, and you know the perpendicular, you're going to invert. So if I invert 2/3, I will get 3 over 2, and you need to put a minus sign in front of it. That's how we got this, right? So you invert and put a minus sign in front of it. Now, we need to work out what is the equation, but I know the gradient and I know it passes through the point 47, right? So let me get a blank page. All right, so this is what we know, right? So we know the gradient of this perpendicular line, right? So m for the perpendicular line is minus 3 over 2, right? So therefore, the equation of the perpendicular line will be y is equal to negative 3 over 2 x plus c, right? So you're missing that value for c there. We need to work that out, right? Now the thing is, it's passing through the point 47, right? Now we need to use this point in order to figure out what c is. Now that point there is a coordinate, so therefore this is an x value and this here is a y value. So what we're going to do, we're going to substitute x and y into this equation. So you're going to say 7 is equal to negative 3 over 2 multiplied by x, which is 4, plus c. So this is going to be 7 is equal to negative 3 over 2 by 4. 2 can go into 4 2 times. So this is going to be minus 6 plus c, right? So I could write this as minus 6 plus c is equal to 7, right? So therefore c is equal to 7 plus 6 and c is equal to 13. So therefore the equation of the perpendicular line right is going to be y is equal to minus 3 over 2 by x plus 13, right? Now if some of y'all working it out at the same time, let me know, right, if you've seen anything wrong, right? Alright, congrats to that person who's talking about AdMats, right? Excellent, right? Some of you all, could you all work out C for me there, right? Let me just make sure my answer is correct. I've seen some people getting some different answers here for C. Right? I'm getting plus 13, right? Okay, good, right? So people saying yes, right? Great. All right, I see people asking about chem and phys, right? I'm not sure if I'll get time to do any chem and phys, maybe the night before, right? I do have a crash courses for each of them, right? But I'm not sure if I'll have the time to do an actual live stream, right? All right, this next one here is Jan 2012, and you want to make x the subject of the formula, right? Now this is one, if you have to change the subject of a formula, this is the most difficult one CSEC can ever give us, right? So part 1 here, right, we have y is equal to 2x plus 3, right, all over x minus 4, right? And you want to make x the subject of the formula. That's what they say, right? So what I will do in a scenario like this, I'll write this y as y over 1. And if you're all wondering why I'm doing that, it's for me to visualize that I have a fraction on the left and a fraction on the right. So then we're going to cross multiply. So we're going to say y by x minus 4 is equal to 2x plus 3 multiplied by 1, right? So what I will do here, I will eliminate my fractions, right? So I'll end up with something like this. Y by x minus 4, you need to put that x minus 4 in brackets, right, is equal to 2x plus 3, right? Then the next thing we're going to do on the left side, we're going to remove the brackets. So this is going to be yx minus 4y is equal to 2x plus 3. Now remember, the objective here is to make x the subject of the formula. So we're going to carry all the x's on one side. So you'll get yx minus 2x is equal to 3 plus 4y, right? Now, on the left-hand side here now, you have two different terms, right? But you have an x in each of them. So what we do in a scenario like this, we tend to factorize. So this is going to be y minus 2, and this is equal to 3 plus 4y, right? Like I said, this is the most difficult change in the subject of the formula CSEC can give us in the exam, right? All right, so at this stage now, you want to make x the subject, so therefore x is equal to 3 plus 4y all over y minus 2, right? So what I've done here, I have made x the subject of the formula, right? So that's the answer for part 1, right? That's the answer for part 1. Right, so that is part 1, right? Part 2 now, they said hence, right? Hence determine the inverse of the function. Now, what CSEC did in SMART here is that they kind of make you work out the inverse before coming to part 2, right? So you know what f of x is. If you want to get the inverse function, we technically did it already, right? You see this expression we just got there? All we need to do to get the actual inverse is to replace the y with x. So the inverse function is simply going to be 3 plus 4x all over x minus 2, right? This is the answer here. That's all you need to do, right? I don't know why they give them 2 marks to this, but that's the answer, right? So you already made x the subject of the formula, so you can use that to work out the inverse, right? So that's part 2. The third part, find the value of x for which f of x is equal to 0. Now, some students have a little trouble with this particular type of question. So we have, this is our function, right? And you want to work out what is the value of x for which f of x is equal to 0. All you need to do, you're going to put 2x plus 3 all over x minus 4, and you're going to put that equal to 0. Now this comes back to the same concept that we just saw, where we were asked the value of x for which the function is undefined. Now you can solve this here, right, by just putting the numerator equal to 0. That's all you need to do here. So you're going to put 2x plus 3 is equal to 0. So therefore 2x is equal to negative 3. And therefore x is equal to negative 3 on 2. Right? So that's it. That's all we need to do here for that part there. We're just going to put in numerator equal to 0, right? All right, let me see somebody saying x minus 4. Yeah, we're not using the x minus 4, you know. That's not what the question asks, you know. For this third part here, they're not asking us anything about the function being undefined. This is a different question from what we just did, right? So be careful, right, Diamond? We're not putting x minus 4 equal to 0 in this one here. All right, so let's move on to our next question here. All right, so some people don't like this kind of question, but it can come in the exam, right? So there's something called linear programming, right, that could show up in your exam. So let's read this question carefully. The diagram shows the graphs of 3 lines and a shaded region defined by the 3 inequalities associated with the line, right? And they said the inequality associated with 3y is equal to x is given by that inequality here. State the other 2 inequalities which define the shaded region, right? So what they did, they gave us the inequality to represent this line here, right? So we have 3y is greater than or equal to x, right? That's what that line is. They want to know, if I get some different colors here for you guys, right? So let's start with, let's do this one here. They said this one here is x is equal to 6. could you all give me the inequality for that line? X is equal to 6. Let me see if you all ever did this in school. Right? I don't know who is Swizzleman, but you're correct with the right. So I've seen some answers in the chat here, right? So the line x is equal to 6, right? That inequality, right? So people are saying it's x greater than or equal to 6. Yeah. If you wanna, you see, we're trying to get this, you see this region here? This is your common region here, right? So if this is the line x is equal to 6, we want everything beyond that there. So the next inequality that we're looking for has to be greater than or equal to 6. That's the next inequality. So we've taken care of the second line. What about the third line now? As this one here. You notice they didn't give us equation here, right? They didn't give us this equation here, right? So let's see. What inequality are they looking for that one? Right, somebody's asking if CX is easier. I'm sure. It's not that bad, right? It's not that bad. Being able to do the maths exam is all about confidence, guys, right? Try not to be afraid of the exam, right? So we're looking at the last inequality, right? Right, so I've seen some answers here. So let me give you a little pointer here, right? You will notice that the graph passes through 0, 40 and 40, 0, right? Anytime you all see a graph where we pass through the same point on the x-axis and the y-axis, the inequality is going to look like this. X plus y, right? And you're going to put 40 here, right? Now you can go and work out the gradient and all of that if you want, right? But you'll get the same thing. Now, x plus y, we need to figure out what inequality am I going to use. Now, if you want to shade that region that we're talking about here, we're looking at anything less than. So this inequality should have been x plus y is less than or equal to 40, right? So you see this question here, this one here, the two answers will be this, x is greater than or equal to 6, and x plus y is equal to 40, right? Hope that making sense, right? Right, so that's that part here, right? Now this part here, the function p, right? P is equal to 4x plus 3y satisfies the solution set represented by the closed triangular region, right? Identify 3 pairs of xy values of p. Identify 3 pairs, right? Values for which p has a maximum or a minimum, right? So I don't know if you all know what they're talking about here. Right? So Andrew Neal, right? If you, like I said, if you do a search on this channel, right, there may be a few questions where I did a full linear programming question where they gave us the statements, we came up with the inequalities, we drew the graph, and then we have to analyze the graph, right? Right, some people ask about chemistry. If you have limited time to study for chemistry, focus all your attention on organic chemistry for now, right? 2 questions will come. Question 3 and question 5 is based on organic, right? All right, so people saying the vertices of the triangle, right? So yeah, whenever you do a question like this, we need to figure out what are these coordinates. So you're looking at the triangle, that's a common region. So let's call this A. What I typically tell students to do is to label them. So let's call this A, B, and C, right? So for part 2, right, the points that we're looking for, let's say A, you're going to go to the graph and you're going to read off the coordinate of A, right? So the x coordinate we know should be 6, and this next one here is going to be 1, 2. So therefore, the coordinates of A is 6, 2. Then we're going to go at the point B, and you're going to read off that. That's going to be 10, 10. That's the second point. And the third point, C, is also going to be 6, but that's going up to 34, right? 6, 34, right? Now pay attention to this question. I mean, this is one of those things people could get wrong, right? So what you're going to do, you're going to look at the vertices, right? You're looking at the vertices, and you're going to write down the coordinates of the vertices here, right? Next step now, right? So that's the second part. Right, so any one of these here will probably give us either a maximum or a minimum value. Now, this part here says which pair makes P a maximum and justify your answer. So we have a formula, right? So we have a formula given by P is equal to 4x plus 3y, right? What we're going to do for each of those points, we're going to substitute the values, right, into that formula and calculate P. So for A, right, A is 6, 2, right? So that means that x is 6 and y is 2. So you're going to substitute into that formula, right? So if you substitute into the formula, you're going to get P is equal to 4 by 6 plus 3 by 2, right? So that's going to be 6 4s are 24. 24 plus 6 is going to give me 30, right? So that's one value that we just worked out. We're going to do the same thing now, but you're going to do it with B now. B is 10, 10, right? So in which case, x is 10 and y is also 10. So you're going to work out P. So P is equal to 4 by 10, right? Plus 3 by 10, right? So that's 40 plus 30, that's 70, right? So that's our second value. We also have to work it out for C as well, which is 634, right? So in this case here, x is, sorry, yeah, in this one here, x is 6, right? And y is 34, right? So we need to work out P. So P is equal to 4 by 6 plus 3 by 34. So that's going to give me 126, right? 126, right? Now the question says which pair makes P a maximum, and they want you to justify your answer. When they say justify your answer, what they're looking for this here. You have to show them that I'm calculating each of these numbers here, right? So we're looking at this here. This is one possible answer, which is 30. This is another possible answer, which is 70. But you'll realize that we can get a value of 126, right? So they said which pair gives me that. So the answer, right, that will maximize P here will be 634, right? That's what they're looking for here, right? So that's the value, or that's the coordinate that is going to maximize, right? Right, that's how people say C is 30, 10. Did I make a mistake just now? Oh, where I get 34 from? Hold on. Wait, hold on. Oh, you meant B. B is 30, 10, right? Hold on. Not C. Right? I'm just going to recalculate this part here, right? Okay, so B is 30, 10, right? So this was 30, 10, my bad. So this here is 30. So this is 30, right? So then this is going to be 4 by 30. So that's 120 plus 30. All right. So hold on. Let's do this here because this will affect our answer. Right. Hold on. All right. So this is 4 trees, 120 plus this. So this is actually 150. Right. So I kind of give you the wrong. So the actual maximum value will be corresponding to 3010. Right. Because you're getting 150 for this one here. Right. And that's the largest that we get in here. Right. Yeah. Somebody say I lose 4 marks for that. You won't lose the 4 marks for it, right? You won't lose the 4 marks for it, right? It's 4 marks here, so you'd have gotten penalized for reading off this wrong, right? And for getting the wrong answer. But you'll still get some marks though. You might get maybe 2 out of the 4, right? But yes, mistakes like that, right? Mistakes like that will cause you some trouble, right? Yeah, so typically it's easy to make mistakes, right? For me doing this here, I'm doing it on a laptop, right? I have lights in front of me, right? If I'm doing it on a piece of paper, it's very different from doing it on a screen, right? With the paper, you can kind of flip through, you could watch it carefully, right? Here, I'm trying to fit a lot of things on one slide, right? So it's easy for me to make a mistake here, right? All right, so that's a linear programming type question, right? All right, so Jan 2013. So yeah, what? I'm not gonna bother to do this one or this one, right? Because we kind of did a few questions like this already, right? But let's do maybe this one here, right? So a line segment GH has this equation 3x plus 2y is equal to 15. Determine the gradient of GH. So this is similar to what we just did. Could you guys put for me in the chat what you think the gradient of this thing is here? What is the gradient of this line here? Yes, you're right. I'm not following the rules. I'm not checking back the work, right? Yep. I'm checking to make sure you all checking the answer, right? All right, so I've seen a lot of correct answers in the chat here. So this one, just like the previous question here, remember all straight lines have to be in the form y is equal to mx plus c, right? All of them has to be in that format. Now, the thing is, we want to take this equation. So we have 3x plus 2y is equal to 15, right? And we want to write this, first of all, in the correct format. So therefore, I can write this as 2y is equal to negative 3x plus 15, right? All I did was take this 3x here and carry it to the right hand side. Nothing fancy, that's all I did. Next step here now, you're going to divide everything by 2. So this is going to be minus 3 over 2 x plus 15 over 2, right? So I want you to understand that you need to rewrite it first before you can work out the gradient. So this gradient here is actually minus 3 on 2, right? So this here is minus 3 over 2, right? All right. Yeah, so that's my gradient here, right? So that's part 1. Part 2 now, they said another line segment, right, is perpendicular to GH. Now, CXC like to bring those questions with perpendicular, right? Now, there are 2 things we need to remember here. With perpendicular lines, when you multiply the gradient, you'll get minus 1. When it comes to parallel lines. Parallel lines have the same gradient, right? CXC is more likely to bring questions involving perpendicular lines, right? But it doesn't mean that it can't bring one where they ask us to get the equation of a line that is parallel to something else. So two things you need to remember. All parallel lines have the same gradient, and when it comes to perpendicular lines, when you multiply the gradients, you get -1, right? So this part 2 here is very similar to a question we just did, right? So let me just one second, I'm just trying to get a blank slide here, right? So, all right, what's the gradient? So this is what we have, right? So we have GH. Now GH looks like this based on the, so this gradient here of this line is equal to -3/2. Right? Now the question says we have, so that's GH. So this here is GH. We have a second line now, JK, which is perpendicular and it passes through 4, 1. Right? So this here, right? So this is GK, right? And it's perpendicular, right? And it passes through some point here, which is given by 4, 1, right? So I want you to visually see what's happening here. So the first thing I need to know, could you all tell me what's the gradient of that green line here? Based on the fact that they are perpendicular. What's the gradient of the green line? Right? While you're all working out that, remember to click like and subscribe, right? Don't just show up to the live class. Remember to hit like and subscribe, right? And please share with other students who need help as well, right? I do a lot of free work, right, to help the students in the Caribbean, right? All right, a lot of people saying 2/3. So remember, right, the key thing here is that when I multiply the gradients, I should get -1. So you see this here? I need to first invert it. So when you invert it, it becomes 2/3, right? And if you put a minus sign in front of it, the minus signs will cancel. So therefore, the gradient of the perpendicular line is going to be 2/3. So we're going to say that to work out the equation of that perpendicular line, it'll be y is equal to 2/3 x plus c. And we're going to use this point here, 4, 1, to work out what c is. So this is x and this is y. So this is going to be 1 is equal to 2/3 multiplied by x, which is 4, right? Which is, right, plus this. So this is saying 1 is equal to 8/3 plus c, right? So I can write this as 8/3 plus c is equal to 1. Therefore, c is equal to 1 minus 8/3. So therefore, c is equal to minus 5/3. Right? So double check my answer here, see if you're getting that. So the equation of the perpendicular line right is going to be y is equal to 2/3 x minus 5/3, right? So that's the equation of this line here we're looking for, right? All right, great. People saying that's correct, right? Right, I have a next one here for you all, right? So this one here, right? A line L passes through S and T, and there's several things they want us to work out here. So this question is a comprehensive question because it has most of the equations we need to know for the exam, right? So we have 2 points, S and T, right? S is 6, 6, right? And T is 0 minus 2, right? Now, on a graph, right, 6, 6 and 0 minus 2, right, will look something like this. So this here could be T, and that is 0 minus 2, right? And 6, 6 could be somewhere here, right? Now, it doesn't have to be accurate. I just want to show you for visualization purposes only, right? So we have 2 points, right? And we have a line L that passes through those 2 points, right? Now, the first thing they want the gradient of the line. So again, guys, when it comes to questions like these, I need you all to label your points. So call this x1, y1, right? Call this x2, y2, and right. So x1, y1, x2, y2, right? We want a gradient of L. So this is part 1. So again, the gradient formula is not given to you in the exam, so you need to know this. So gradient is equal to y2 minus y1 all over x2 minus x1, right? So it's just a matter of substituting into the formula. So y2 in my case is minus 2 minus 6 all over x2, which is 0 minus 6. So on the numerator, minus 2 minus 6 is minus 8, and 0 minus 6 is minus 6. So when I reduce this here, I'm going to get 4 over 3, right? So just double check my answer there, right? Make sure 4 over 3 is correct. You have to be careful with the negative signs, yeah? Be careful with the negative signs. Right, so that's part 1. The next part here, they want the equation of the line L, right? So this part 2, they want the equation of the line L. So remember, all equations have the form y equal to mx plus c, right? And we want to figure out what is the equation of the line. Now the thing is, you know what the gradient is. So the m is 4 over 3. That's what you just calculated. But what about the c? Anybody know what the value of c is? Right? So I hope those of you who worked out the value of c, right? I hope you all realize that you didn't have to calculate it. This here, this coordinate here is a y-intercept coordinate. Because remember, every y-intercept is written as 0c, right? So you technically, you know what c is. C is minus 2. So you don't need to calculate anything. That's all you need to write down. Y is equal to 4/3 x minus 2, right? What about the third part here? Before I work it out, could you all work out the midpoint for me? What's the midpoint of that line TS? Right, I've seen a lot of people have similar answers, right? So I'm just going to go to the next page, right? So T is 0 minus 2. Right, and S is SS. I'm 6, 6, sorry. 6, 6. Right, so let me just label these points here. So x1, y1, x2, y2. Right? Now when they ask you for the midpoint here, they basically want to know what is this point here. This point here is your midpoint. It's midway between S and T, right? So midpoint formula is not given to you in the exam as well. So this is third part. Right? So your midpoint, right, is given by this formula. All you do, you're adding up your 2x coordinates, so x1 plus x2, right, divided by 2, y1 plus y2 divided by 2, right? That's how you're going to find your midpoint. Yeah. Add the two x values, divide by 2, add the two y values, divide by 2. So this is going to be 0 plus 6 divided by 2, comma, because it's a coordinate, minus 2 plus 6 all over 2, right? So this here is going to be 6 over 2, comma, minus 2 plus 6, you're going to get 4 over 2, and then we can reduce this. 6 divided by 2 is going to give me 3, 4 divided by 2, you're going to get 2, right? So I saw a lot of you all got this. That's the correct answer. That's a midpoint, right? Right? So that's your midpoint here, right? That's your midpoint, right? What else we have here? So that's the third part, right? Part 4, right? Part 4, you want to work on the length of the line segment. So guys, this question here is a very comprehensive question because it asks 4 different things here we need to know for the exam. You need to know about gradient, you need to know about equation, you need to know the formula for midpoint, and you also need to know the formula for the length of a line segment. None of these formulas are given to you in the exam, so you have to learn it, right? So the length, right, is given by this formula. You're really using Pythagoras' theorem here, right? So it's given by x2 minus x1, right, squared, plus y2 minus y1 squared, and you find the square root, right? So again, this formula is not given to you guys in the exam, so you have to learn it off. So x2 in this case here is 6, so that's 6 minus 0 squared, plus 6, right, minus 2 squared, right, and you find the square root, right? So 6 minus 0 will give me 6, so this is 6 squared, right, plus 6 minus 2 is 8 because you're adding it, so that's squared. Square root 6 squared is 36 plus 64, right? So that's going to give me 100, right? So the square root of 100 is going to be 10. When you guys work out length in the exam, right, using coordinate geometry, that's what this is, you're going to put 10 units, right? Don't leave it as just 10, but put 10 units. If you forget the units in the exam, you'll still get it correct, so don't sweat, right? You'll still get it correct. Right? Right. All right, guys. So I know a lot of you all would like me to stay on for like hours teaching you guys, right? And the truth is, I would if I could have, right? So I like doing some of these free sessions, right? I like doing these free sessions, right? But I have a lot of work to get done, right? I have a lot of work to get done because I am preparing for 4 different crash courses that I have to do, right? And that is for maths, add maths, chemistry, and physics, right? So please pay attention to some of these questions I've done in class today, right? In your exam, relations, functions, and graphs, there are 2 questions that will come, right? That's question 4 and question 8, right? Now let me just give you an idea. In question 4 and question 8, right? These are the things that can come. You can get functions like what we just did, right? Functions can come, right? We can get equation, we can get gradient, right? So you can get gradient, midpoint, right? You can get length, right? Equation, right? You can also get things like parallel and perpendicular lines, right? We can get a whole question in the exam on linear programming, right? Where we have to graph the inequalities, right? So linear programming could be a whole question here. It could be the whole of question 8, right? Also in question 8, we can get quadratics, right? So sometimes they make us draw a quadratic in the exam, right? That can come as well, right? We can also get completing the square. Right? So actually, you know what? Let me just do one more question with you all, right? Let me do one more question with you all. Let's do a completing the square question, right? So let's see. I'm gonna show you something. Let's say I had a question like this, right? 3x squared, right, plus 7x minus 1, right? Let's say I had a question like this, and in the exam, right? Now they won't come out and tell you in the exam complete the square, right? There won't be a question like that. What they will do, they will tell you this. They will say write this in the form ax plus h squared, right, plus k. That's what CSEC will tell us. And typically in the exam, this is worth 3 marks, right? That's what you will see in the exam, right? Now, there are various ways you can work this, right? So in my maths class, I used to teach all the different ways, right? But in this case here, I have stuck to just one method. So whatever method you guys learned in school, stick to it. If you've never seen it before, this is the method I teach my class. So step 1, right? When I have to write or complete the square, 3x squared plus 7x minus 1, right? You want to complete the square. The first thing I do is to factor out this 3 here. That's the first step in my process, right? Now, some students not sure how we do that, but basically what we're doing is, right, you're dividing every single thing by 3 in order to get rid of that, right? That's what we do. So what's happening here, this will give me x squared. This will give me 7 over 3x, right? And this will give me minus 1/3, right? Now, so we factor in out this 3, open brackets. This will be x squared plus 7 over 3 x, right, minus 1/3, right? So that's the first step I normally show that. The next thing we're going to do now, we vex with our 3 on the outside, leave it right there. We're not going to touch it until the end. And then inside the bracket now, we're going to start to complete the square. So it's always going to be a bracket squared, always. The first thing in the bracket is going to be an x, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to find half of 7 over 3. So some students not sure when I do this piece here, but half of 7 over 3 is the same as saying 7 over 3, or half by 7 over 3. So this is going to give us 7 over 6, right? So this is going to be plus 7 over 6, right? So you find half of that value here. Next thing you do, you write back whatever you had from on top, which is negative 1/3. And then the final thing we're going to do now, you're going to put a minus sign here, and you have to square this, right? Now, when you square 7 over 6, that's the same as saying 7 over 6 by 7 over 6. So that's going to give us 7 7s are 49 over 36, right? So this is going to be minus 49 over 36, right? Right? I know some of you all watching this and thinking, oh my God, what are you doing? Right? But it's called completing the square, right? Right? So next thing we're going to do now, right? I normally tell you guys, clean up the inside of the bracket. So this is just going to stay as x plus 7 over 6 squared, right? Now, 1 second. Let me see if you all see my calculator here. Right, I'm hoping you all see my calculator there, I'm not sure, right? So one of the best things you can do with your calculator is to work out something like this, right? So what I want to do, I want to work out minus 1/3 minus 49 over 36, right? So we'll use the calculator for that. Minus 1/3. So let's clear this. So you're going to put 1 over 3 with a minus sign in front of it, right? Minus 49 over 36, right? Please make sure you all know how to use the fraction in your calculator. It is very handy, right? Now what we normally do, we normally work in improper fraction. So we get minus 61 over 36. So this here is going to be minus 61 over 36, right? And then the final step now, you have to take this 3, multiply by this, take this 3 and multiply by this. So the final answer is going to be 3 by x plus 7 over 6 squared, right? And for this piece here, we're just taking that number and multiply by 3. And you're going to get minus 61 over 12. Right? Let me know if anybody getting minus 61 over 12, right? I know the it's looking kind of strange, right? But this is something that you all have to know for the exam, how to complete, right? All right, so I've seen some people getting minus 61 over 12, yeah, right? Looking correct to me. Right? Now, whatever technique, right? Yeah, whatever technique you want, if you all know the formula, then go ahead, right? That's fine, right? If this comes in the exam, it'll be somewhere in question 8, right? It'll be somewhere in question 8, okay? Now, since I'm here already, right? I know I say I'm going, right? But hold on, let me show you something quickly. Let's say, right? Let's say we completed the square and we got something like this, right? X plus 2 squared plus 9, right? I just say, let's say we get something like this, right? And CSEC says, right, they want to know what is the maximum value. So let's say we had f of x equal to this, right? You completed the square. And CSEC come and they said, what's the max value of f of x, right? Max value of f of x, right? Could you all put in the chat what's the max value based on that completed square? What's the max value based on that completed square that I have there, right? I just gave you one that is completed, right? What is the max value of f of x? Right, so I've seen some answers coming in here, right? Now guys, watch, this is one thing they can ask us. What is the max value of f of x? So the max value is simply whatever k is. So the answer is simply going to be 9, right? The answer is going to be 9. If they just ask you for the max value, it's going to be 9. If they were to ask you the value of x for which, right, f of x, right? So hold on, I just realized something here. This is a minimum, right? This is a minimum question. So the minimum value, let's change this word here, min, right? If you're all wondering how I know it's a minimum, right? Because the coefficient of x squared is positive, this graph is going to look like this, right? It has a minimum value, not a maximum value, right? So next thing they're going to ask you is the value of x for which f of x is a minimum, right? So to do that, all you need to do is to put this here equal to 0. So x plus 2 is equal to 0. And therefore, x is equal to minus 2. Right? So that's your answer for this part here. X is equal to minus 2. That's what CSEC can access. So what's the minimum value of the function? Right? What value of x? What is the value of x for which f of x is a minimum? They can also ask you for coordinates of min point, right? In which case, all we need to do, we need the x value that we just got, which is minus 2. And this value here is your minimum point, right? So this graph here has a minimum point given by minus 2 and 9, right? So these are questions they can ask you when they complete the square, right? So there's an advantage to completing the square. All right, so I kind of give you a little extra there, right? I kind of give you a little extra here. So this time I'm going to pause now, right? So I know some of you all asking when next am I going to go live? So it depends on the time I have available in the night, right? So the best thing to do is to make sure you hit subscribe and like, because I can't give you a definite time or definite day that I'm going to go back live. Once I have the time, I'm going to go live, right? So guys, this is it for me for this afternoon, right? Enjoy the rest of your night, right? Thanks for coming out, right? Remember to share the link of this live session to your friends, right? So whoever you can help, go ahead and help, right? Good night, everybody, right? Good luck with your studying, people.